My name is Bianca Lua. I'm a junior at Gabrielino High School. And a fun fact about me is that I have a cute little dog named Chiquita, which in Spanish means small or little. And we call her Chiquis. So today for our quiet time study, I'm excited to continue on this amazing series called Doubt It. And today the topic of our quiet time is going to be focused on the big idea that faith isn't blind. And the scripture that we're going to be reading today is Judges 6, which tells the story of God and Gideon. So beginning in Judges 6, we begin to see the story of Gideon and the Israelites. Now at this time, the Israelites are being oppressed by the people, the Midianites, because of their disobedience to God. So they have to flee from their homes, their crops and food supply is being taken from them by these people who are just completely oppressing them and overpowering them. And at this moment, the people feel completely powerless and defenseless. And although God is doing this to obviously teach them a lesson and to punish them for their disobedience, God tends to do this thing where He'll put us in a situation where we're in trouble, but He'll also save us from that situation through people that He uses as His tools. And we can see that pattern in many different areas of the Bible. But today we're going to focus on Gideon, who, fun fact, was a leader of the weakest clan in the entire area. God, what? How is that going to help at all, right? But God uses His power through people who we least suspect be able to lead, be able to conquer, and He does amazing things through them, like always. So I'm going to be starting to read in Judges 6, verse 12. And as we're reading this, and as the angel of the Lord approaches Gideon to propose God's plan, I want us to not only focus on Gideon's response and the very humanistic perspective, but also how God is working through him and the specific things that God tells him as He's addressing him and as He's trying to encourage him to take on this role. So starting in verse 12, it reads, "When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, 'The Lord is with you, mighty warrior.' 'But sir,' Gideon replied, 'if the Lord is with us, why has all of this happened to us? Where are all His wonders that our fathers told us about when they said, "Did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt?" But now the Lord has abandoned us and put us into the hand of Midian.' The Lord turned to him and said, 'Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you?' 'But Lord,' Gideon said, 'how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest, and I am the least in my family.' The Lord answered, 'I will be with you, and you will strike down the Midianites together.' But Gideon replied, 'If now I have found favor in your eyes, give me the sign that it is really you who are talking to me.'" So we can see Gideon is already having all these issues, but now he's presenting the idea that he doesn't have the faith that it's really God addressing him. It says, "Please do not go away until I come back and bring my offering and I set it before you." And the Lord said, "I will wait until you return." Gideon went in, prepared a young goat from an ephah and a flour, and he made bread without yeast, putting the meat in a basket and its broth in a pot, and brought them out and offered them under the oak. The angel of the Lord said to him, "Take the meat and the unleavened bread, place them on this rock, and pour out the broth." And Gideon did so. With the tip of a staff that was in his hand, the angel of the Lord touched the meat and the unleavened bread. Fire flared from the rock, consuming the meat and the bread, and the angel of the Lord disappeared. When Gideon realized that it was an angel of the Lord, he exclaimed, "O sovereign Lord, I have seen the angel of the Lord face to face." But the Lord said to him, "Peace, do not be afraid. You are not going to die." That's comforting. So as you can see here, Gideon appears to be very afraid, which is very relatable. I think in any moment in my life where I felt as God has been calling me to do something for Him, I'm immediately scared and anxious. And I definitely think that comes out of my selfish nature, that I don't want to do things that put me outside of my comfort zone, even though I know God is calling me to do it. Like I remember an instance that was actually the day of my baptism, and we were at Costco buying food for the baptism. Gotta get them snacks. And someone asked me what all the food was for. Like, they said, was it for a birthday party or something? And right there was an opportunity, the first opportunity that God threw at me to share my faith right before getting baptized. And I froze up and was like, oh my God, I'm so uncomfortable. What if they think I'm a weirdo, right? Some Jesus freak, which I've actually been called before, fun fact. And so I just kind of froze up, and it was my mom that had to nudge me, and I was like, it's from a baptism. But oftentimes, it's really easy for me to be fearful and doubtful that I really am a person who is capable of fulfilling God's will and God's plan. And I think that's a really relatable struggle that we can all take away. But besides that being something that we can all relate to, I really want to focus on God right here. Because if we look back at our topic of the idea that faith isn't blind, that just immediately makes me think about how God doesn't choose people randomly. He chooses to have faith in people that he knows he can use to harness his power and his glory through in order to fulfill his plan. But God still had faith in him that he could fulfill the duty of defeating the Midianites, even though he was weak and the least of his family. And I think that's really amazing. And God continues to do that in our lives. God doesn't do anything blindly, but he puts his faith in people who he believes and knows, because he is all-knowing, that can make a difference for him. And I think that's just incredibly powerful, that God has this very intentional faith within us. It's like we're this sculpture that has not yet been sculpted. And God is the ultimate sculptor who can already see the image that he wants us to become before it even is chiseled away at. So as he chips away at us to reveal what our true purpose is, we may be completely lost to that, because all we see is a piece of stone. But God, in his all-powerful foresight, knows what we can do, right? And it's exciting because God knows that we can be effective tools for him. And I think that's awesome. The fact that God doesn't have blind faith in us, that is completely intentional, that all of you are completely worthy of being used by God for very specific reasons. What he sees is totally beyond us. But it is so intentional, and it is so based on evidence and not blind faith. So last thing that I want you guys to take away from this quiet time is that if you feel that God is calling you to do something, don't be afraid.
So some questions I have for reflection are: first, just think about, is God calling you to do something that you are afraid of accepting, or is it hard to really trust God's calling for you is right for who you are? Is it hard to trust his decision making? Second, how can you mimic God's intentional faith and not having blind faith in your own walk with God? Thank you guys for listening, and I hope you have a good quiet time.